Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Some great singing there and great hymns. Thank you for all of that. Get our hearts ready for the message today. And we're going to continue on a message we started a couple of weeks ago on stewardship. Now, this message, I'm a little concerned that it might be a little bit of a fire hose kind of message. I want to be careful about that. But I do have a number of points to make, and we'll just see how far we go here today. Now, we went over a few things last time. The definition of stewardship technically is the responsibility and management of a household, but it's broadened to apply to us in general in our life. And so just remember that. And we looked at a couple of points. One is God is the owner of everything. Okay, it says that in that translation. Everything in the world is yours. And then it says in Ezekiel, all souls are mine. Think about that. All souls are mine, God says. And so he's the owner, and then we're the steward of the things which he has given us. This is just review from last message. And we have that beautiful Psalm 8, which we heard last week, where it says, when I consider the heavens and the works of your hands, the moon and the stars, then he asks the question, what is man that you're mindful of him? And then he says, thou madest him to have dominion over the works of thy hands. So we have dominion, we have stewardship, I'll say, over the works of his hands, which are everything. Everything is yours. All souls are mine. He's given us dominion over the works of thy hands. So there is an area of stewardship which we all need to be walking in. That's what we want to cover and look at in more detail. But I'd like to take it to another level. And this verse I found in studying for this, 1 Peter 4:19. Commit the keeping of their souls to him in well-doing as unto, who is God? A faithful creator. Oh, no, that's a little different than the owner, you know? That's not your boss. He's your creator. Is there any analogy I could make for that? Not really. Not when it comes to living things. I mean, there's lots of creations going on. I've written a couple of songs, you know, Barry's built a couple of houses. God is the creator of everything, and he's the creator of you, not just the owner. That kind of puts stewardship on even a higher level to me as I look at that. And just some things about him being the creator. Everything that God has created, everything is unique, okay? It's one of a kind. And they're all beautiful, of course, and wonderful, but they're all unique. God, when he made flowers, he did not make a template. You know what that is? When you're building something, you want to make a whole bunch of something. You make one, and then you measure all the rest of them off the one you just made, a template. He didn't do that. He made each one individually as it pleased him. Remember, the works are your finger work, it says. Just boom, the stars, you know, the galaxies, the universe, just his finger work. Everything was unique and very special and very beautiful too. And then everything is created for a purpose. When you create something, you don't do it for nothing. You do it for something. You put your time and energy into making something for some reason. Here's an example. Thomas Edison was a great inventor of things. I'll say he was a creator. And do you know what that is, young people? That is an MP3 player. Old school. It's called a phonograph. And that became a record player. You know, you could talk into that. It's amazing. You could talk into that little horn and it would record your voice on a little something. And then you could play it back. Or you could put in something and play music and end up being LPs. And now we're here. But he created that. He didn't do it just to stick it in his laboratory and get happy about what no, he did it for a purpose. He did it to be used. He was also a very good marketer, but that's a whole nother story. How about this? The Falcon Heavy rocket. Well, Elon Musk created that along with his engineers. Did he do that just for a hobby? No, he did it to fly people to Mars. Okay? Everything created is created for a purpose in God's economy. You are created for a purpose, not just to sit in the laboratory and be admired. You are created to do something, to be something. God did it that way because he is a faithful creator. So we get back to this passage, Psalm 8. I'll just leave that beautiful picture of that rocket up there for you to enjoy. It's amazing. Why didn't they call it the Heavy Falcon? They call it the Falcon Heavy because it lifts more than any other rocket, including the Saturn V booster. But don't get me started. So that beautiful psalm, what is man that you are mindful of him? What is man? That is not a cynical question. Like, well, what is man? Just throwaway item, disposable. No. No, remember, you were created. You were created for a purpose. And out of all of those beautiful things that I just showed you, you are created in the image and likeness of God himself. Don't ever forget that. When you meet somebody on the street, they were created in the image and the likeness of God himself. Now, that image has been marred and damaged terribly. No doubt about it. And God knows about it. And it is right out there for all of us to see. But that doesn't change the fact, the biblical truth, that you and all men and women and children are created in the image and likeness of God. Not angels, not galaxies, not animals, humans, your creation in the image and likeness of God. And so we have a responsibility to reflect and operate in this image and in the abilities and things that he has given us to work with. Stewardship. And what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to glorify God and serve others. Those are the kind of the two commandments, right? Love God and love your neighbor. Johnson quoted this psalm last week, and he said it in such a nice way. I'd like to quote him if I could, quote Johnson Thomas. He said, man is God's exceptional work, his masterpiece. I agree with that. Nothing like it. Nothing like the human creation. And if you haven't heard that message, you ought to go back and review that again. It was a powerful message. And I'm just kind of taking it in another level, another direction here. Luke 12, in a little parable, Jesus says, aren't 5 sparrows sold for 2 pennies and God does not forget any one of them? And you say, yeah. And then he says, you are of more value than many sparrows. That's quite an understatement. You're of more value than many galaxies, okay? Who knows the value that you have to God as his creation? I don't know, but the Bible brings it out some. Now, as we look at stewardship, I want to look at several areas, 4 different areas of it that we'll cover in our message today, Lord willing. And just to preface this, I would like to look at a couple of verses we looked at last time. 1 Corinthians 4:2 says, it is required in stewards, that's one of the verses that uses the word, that a man be found faithful. God wants you to be faithful in your stewardship. That means consistent, reliable. And we looked at the 3 points I made last time was there's an ability in stewardship. God is never going to ask you to do something he hasn't equipped you with the abilities to do. There is a responsibility in stewardship. That's the faithful part. And then we see in several verses in the Gospels, there is an accountability in stewardship. God wants to know what you've done. And it says in Romans 14, every man will give an account of himself to God. So there's something there, an ability, a responsibility, and an accountability. But the beautiful thing is this next Psalm, 101:6, you take the first Psalm about stewards being faithful. This says, God says, I'll look with favor on the faithful in the land. Oh, there's a great reward in good stewardship of doing what you're supposed to do with what God has given you to work with. A great reward, favor. Love that. God is going to give us his favor. Well, let's look at a couple of a few avenues, areas of stewardship. One I want to hit on today is time. God made time. In the evening and morning was the first day. Okay. And even though God is eternal, God operates in the time that he made. The Lord Jesus certainly did. He came to the earth, right? He had days and nights and fatigue and all of the things that we endure. God operates in time. He made time. He gives time to us. And look at this verse here. He asks us to do something with our time. Ephesians 5:15. See that you walk circumspectly. A lot of translations might say carefully. Could mean diligently or perfectly. Walk circumspectly, redeeming the time because the days are evil. Redeeming the time. Interesting choice of words there. That's the same word that his use of Christ, that he redeemed us from the curse of the law. It means to buy something back. And for us, the way it's used here, it really would be to buy for oneself, to buy back this time, to buy up for oneself, for one's own use. And that just means, in terms of stewardship, that we would make use of all the opportunities we have to function in our stewardship, in time, as I'm talking about it, that we would make the best use of the time that we have. We only have 24 hours a day, okay? We have to make the best use of that time. There isn't any more of it. It just kind of goes, it's sort of like a 24-hour sale, you know? Act now, the sale's only good for 24 hours. In fact, the Harbor Freight has a sale today. It ends, I'm going out there after this message, 30% off everything $20 or less. I'll go find something, I'm sure. So you got to act on this. This is a 24-hour sale, okay? And you've got to buy this time and do something with it. Now, you can do a few things with time. You can spend time, you can invest time, or you could waste time. Now, how do you spend time? Well, maybe you're driving somewhere, you're driving to St. Louis, so you're going to spend some time in the car. There's no getting around it. You go to work, you're going to spend some time at work. That's just made out for you. You can't change that. But you could also invest your time. While you're driving to St. Louis, you could be listening to something, learning something, having a meaningful discussion with whoever happens to be in the car about something. You can invest your time. Now, I'm wondering in the audience, I'm looking at whether you're spending your time today or investing your time, and I don't know what the answer is to that. You could be a little mixture there. Some people come just to be here and get it over with. Other people come to learn something and to be challenged by what they're hearing. That would be investing your time. But then you could also waste your time. And you can waste your time by doing nothing or by doing things that don't profit, that don't matter, or could even be hurtful or dangerous to you. You could waste your time with all of those things. But what does God want us to do? He wants us to redeem our time, making the most of every opportunity to use the things that God has given us for his glory and for the good of others. Now, I want to look at a slide here I found, which shows us how we use our time a little bit. And, you know, some of these up at the top there, doing housework, socializing, shopping. This is in a lifetime. Let me define this. They said the average lifespan worldwide is 73 years. Ours would be longer than that. And say at age 10 is when you start like using social media and doing things. Okay, so it's 63 years. That's what this is. Okay, so we're shopping 2 years and 2 months in our lifetime. Okay, sounds like a lot, but I want you to focus on the last three there. Social media. This is from 2019, by the way. This is old news. This is probably all different now, but we'll just go with these ratios. 6 years and 8 months, 6.5 years of your life on social media. This kind of really puts it in perspective as I saw this. Watching TV. Now, I don't know how many people here watch TV that much. Probably not in my audience that much, but it could include Netflix, Hulu, or whatever all the other ones are, Amazon Prime. That's all watching TV, okay? Now, when I worked for DirecTV, I had every channel that they offer, like 350 channels. Most of them I wouldn't give the time of day to, but I did watch a little TV. I'll be honest with you. I'd probably watch an hour in the evening, maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours, maybe a couple of sporting events. But I don't work there anymore, and I don't have those channels. And guess how much TV I watch now? Zero TV. And I don't even really do the documentaries. Guess how much time that frees up? Well, all of a sudden I've created 2 hours a day to do something else. Create something maybe, who knows? Okay, and then the last one, sleep. 26 years, a third of your life, you're asleep. Don't touch that, okay? We don't want to mess with that. And I'll get on that later here in a little bit about sleep, okay? Now, I was looking at that and I was thinking, okay, what about other things that are important for me as a Christian, for you as a Christian, if you're a Christian today, if you've trusted Christ as Savior? And so I kind of had to redo this slide a little bit. This is 63 years. There's your lifespan. Forgive me for kind of manipulating this. I'm not as good at this as others in the audience here. And there's your sleep, 26 years. There's TV, there's social media. What about going to church? And what about personal devotions? I wonder how much time in our lifetime we spend doing those things. Well, let's just speculate here. Let's say you went to church, and we're talking about us here at ETBC. Say you went to the remembrance meeting like we had. Here we're at the Family Bible Hour. You're investing your time in the Family Bible Hour. And then, call me crazy, you stay for the third meeting, for the adult Bible study, okay? And call me crazier still, you come again on Wednesday to the prayer meeting or whenever your prayer meeting happens to be. Now, if you did that, you'd spend about 5 hours a week going to church, okay? Okay, now say you have devotions. Now, that could vary widely for everybody. I just average, let's say you do 30 minutes a day in some kind of devotion, reading a devotion, reading some Bible, maybe watching some little messages on YouTube or something, or whatever you're doing, 30 minutes a day. I figured that in. So if we use the same metric, 63 years, and we did that, here's what your church and devotion would be in a lifetime. But I'm being very generous about those numbers. You know, most people, if they go to church at all, if they're Christians, they probably go to one meeting a week. Just they go to a message, you know, they go to some church and they go there and that's it. And they probably do it that way. And devotions, 30 minutes. No, I'm busy. I gotta get to work. I got this, I got that. So we're going to do 15 minutes a day. We'll cut these things in half. Okay. And church way in half. So if you do that, here's where we're at in a lifetime. Christians, do you think we can do better than this? I mean, really? I do. I want to spend more time, invest more time in things that really matter. Now, I'm not saying be a caveman, get rid of, you know, everything. We can't do that. We live in the world we live in. And just one thing here, this is again 2019. Look at this. Facebook, 1.9 billion daily active users. That's like a third of the world's population is on this thing. And they say 33 minutes a day. I won't ask for a show of hands, but how many people spend more than 33 minutes a day on Facebook? You know the answer. I don't. I don't have Facebook, but I do sneak on my wife's occasionally. Now, listen, let's turn this on its head for a second. I'm not a Neanderthal here. I happen to love the internet. I love using it. It's just the greatest thing ever. It's a great way to learn things, a great way to be inspired. Facebook can be very inspirational. There's a lot of good things out there. Why don't you use your time on Facebook to sow a little seed out there? Bring the gospel in. What does your profile say on Facebook? I hope it identifies you as a Christian, because everybody looks at your profile that wants to know who you are. I hope that's on there. Maybe a little Bible verse in your profile. You know, if everybody's going to be looking at everybody, at least we ought to have a testimony of some kind on social media. And so you can do that. And guess what? If you have thousands of viewers watching something you put out there, and then you do a little gospel one, you'll probably get 50 viewers on that one. But that's okay, because they heard it and they didn't like it or whatever, or they liked it. I don't know. But can't we use these things for the Lord? Sure we can. So if you have a problem with social media, if it's like an addiction, which it certainly can be, then you'd have to get serious about it. And that's why I got off of Instagram. I just don't want to be there. Don't want to do that. It's just not helpful for me. Maybe some other time, but not now. And so we have to be savvy. You know, we have to be smart with what's in front of us. And I'm speaking to everybody young and old because we're all faced with it all the time. So are we going to spend our time, or are we going to invest our time, or are we going to waste our time? And I had a show of hands. Some of you are a little timid there, but we all waste too much time and we could use it better. So that's time there. So let's leave that and let's take a look at our talents. Okay, now again, we're all talking about stewardship here, your skills and your talents, not your gifts. We have lots of messages on spiritual gifts. These are your skills, the things that you can do, your talents. 1 Corinthians 4:7. What do you have that you did not receive? What's the answer to that? What do you have that you didn't receive? Nothing. I've been created, right? Yeah. I like to say babies have a sticker under their arm if you look carefully, and it says, warranty revoked, if sticker removed, some assembly required. Because they kind of come equipped somehow with certain tendencies, but they receive those through their parents, through their genetic code and things like that. So we've received everything. Again, God's the owner and we're the steward. A couple of verses which are very interesting just to look around for skills in the Bible. There is a verse where David is speaking to Solomon about building the temple. Now, what does Solomon know about building the temple? Probably nothing. He's Solomon, right? He's born with a silver spoon in his mouth. He got everything from his dad. But look at this nice encouraging verse that David says to his son, and with you in all your work will be every willing man who has a skill for any kind of service. Whew, that's good. So I got people on board. I got carpenters, stonemasons, goldsmiths, all metal workers, all of this stuff is going to be there. And then another one, when they were building the tabernacle, the women were asked to make some fabrics and things. And it says here in Exodus 35, every skillful woman spun with her hands, all the women whose hearts stirred them to use their skill. Get this picture of them. Now, what's common in both of these passages? It's this willingness to do something with your talent. If you're good at something, whatever it might be, use it for something. Don't put your phonograph in the closet. Launch your Falcon Heavy, okay? Use your skills in the service of others. I mean, if you have a real practical skill, let people know that you're available to help them. This is what love is all about. It's what service is all about. If you could build things or clean things or I don't know, there's so many things you all do. You're also talented at so many things. Help people to learn how to do what you do. Get better at what you do. Hone your skills. Refine your skills. It says that David played skillfully on the harp. I wonder how he learned how to do that. Well, I think he invested and redeemed a bunch of time out there in the pasture when you're watching those sheep. Not a lot to do all the time. Might as well learn how to play piano, right? Or harp in his case. You could do things with your time and improve in your skills. Lots could be said about that. And you know, last work day we had, whenever that was, it was impressive. I was just watching, like, wow, all the stuff's going on. All these people are doing all these things. And then we've seen it in the remodeling of the chapel and all of this, just skills piled upon skills, and you get the result of it. And remember, God looks with favor on the faithful of the land. So there's a sense of God's favor upon us as we help one another and love one another this way. Something to think about. All right. And just again, to bring this verse back into our minds, such a great verse. Whatever you do it heartily, as to the Lord and not unto men, for you serve the Lord Christ. Remember, I said, if you don't like your job, start liking your job, because you're serving the Lord Christ. You're not serving that boss. You're serving your Creator, even when you go to work. So you got to go with a skip in your step and with an uplifted eyes and looking forward to the day, whatever it might bring, because God has brought it to you. So let's be that way. So let's leave talents. We're going to talk here about the body, because the body is another aspect of stewardship. Now, I do enter a little intrepidation into this part of the fire hose, but here we go. The body. Some people are not happy with their bodies. Some people, I will say, are a little too happy about their bodies. But sadly, I think most of us don't think too much about our bodies at all. We're not being stewards of our bodies. And the body is so amazing that it can kind of function just on its own almost for a while. I talked about running a car and never maintaining the fluids. Eventually, the car will seize up, and our bodies are no different. Now, I want to tell you a few things about the body. David certainly had a high regard. He says in Psalm 139, I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. That's what David says about his body. And another translation puts it this way: thank you for making me so wonderfully complex. That's the New Living Translation. Isn't that cute? That's good. Thank you, God, for making me so wonderfully complex. I don't think we talk that way, but I really love that. It's so true. Here's a couple of facts about your body. You have approximately 100 trillion cells in your body. Some people say 35 trillion, some 200. We'll just cut it down. 100 trillion cells. We're getting pretty used with this trillion thing, the way our government spends money. So you ought to understand that better than you ever have. You have 100 trillion cells in your body. Within each one of those cells are 23 pairs of chromosomes. And within each of those chromosomes in each cell are 3 billion base pairs of DNA. Those are little proteins that are stuck together. And that's your genetic code. So you're doing the math. Some of you guys are math whizzes. You on me here? I can't do that. Okay, we got 100 trillion cells. We got 46 chromosomes, and we have 3 billion base pairs of DNA in those chromosomes in one cell. If you took those DNAs are like a garden hose. It's going to take you 20 minutes to uncoil. There are coils on coils on coils on coils to get everything in there, all of that complexity. If you took the DNA out of just one of your 100 trillion cells and stretched it out, if you could, and you can, it would be 2 meters long in one cell. No kidding. I looked it up. If you took all the, you know where I'm going with this? If you took all the DNA in all of your cells and uncoiled it and unraveled it and made one long string out of it, you know how long it would be? It would be as long as a tennis court, Kansas. If you strung out all of your DNA, it would be twice the diameter of the solar system. Yep, the solar system, Pluto and back, in you. Thank you for making me so wonderfully complex. Your brain has 86 billion neurons in it, nerve cells in your head. Some of you might think I have a little more. Some of you are sure you have a little less. That's just an average number. 86 billion neurons. And to connect those neurons, there are 100 trillion connections between all of those neurons in your brain. The fastest CPU has 5 billion transistors. That's it. And by the way, it won't be getting any faster because they've reached the practical limit of how fast you can push an electron through a wire. So we got to come up with a new architecture. But your brain, I heard a guy talking about computers last night. He had a great line. He said, your computer is as dumb today as it was yesterday. Meaning they don't learn. Computers don't learn. Now, the AI is another discussion, which we'll get into some other time. But your brain is constantly learning. Who can even understand it? Thank you for making me so wonderfully complex. You breathe 23,000 times a day. Your heart beats 113,000 times a day, and you don't even have to do it. You can't stop your heart from beating if you wanted to, and you can't make it beat if it had to. Same thing with breathing. You can try to stop breathing, but it's not going to go well for you. You will breathe eventually. Okay? Not so much with a heartbeat. That's all automatic. Your skin, your hair grows up to 6 inches a year or so. But you know, in spite of all of this automatic stuff in our bodies, which is miraculous, God still asks us to be a steward of our body. And I wanted to touch on a few things there, just a couple of points about the functions of the body. The Phillips translation of 1 Timothy 4:8 says, bodily fitness has a certain value, but spiritual fitness is essential. Now, of course, we're not comparing the two here. We understand eternal life, eternal destiny is ultimately what it's all about. But we live here, we live in time, we live in space, and we have a body, and God's given it to us to steward. Okay? Jesus, he said, he was walking around in the temple area, and he said, destroy this temple, and in 3 days, I'll build it again. And then it comments 2 verses later, it says, he spoke of the temple of his body. And they miss the analogy there big time. Well, you say, well, yeah, Jesus, of course, the God-man, of course, his body would be a temple, God's dwelling in him, and all of he's the image and likeness. No, 1 Corinthians 6:19 says, your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit within you, whom you have from God. What do you have that you did not receive? Your body. Your body is described in the Bible as a temple. What's a temple? Well, it's beautiful, it's useful, and so many other things. If we are poor in our stewardship of our bodies, we can inhibit what God could do with us and through us. And that could affect other people. It could be an unneeded burden and so forth. But there are ways to not go down that road. There's ways to be well and to be as good as you can be. We call it optimal health. Sometimes you can only get to a certain level for a lot of reasons, but you get there. You want to be there. And if you're healthy now, you can maintain that and sustain that over long periods of time through certain choices. And I wanted to touch on a couple of them here. A couple of ways to steward your body. One is, you like this, love your sleep. Love your sleep. The sleep of a laborer is sweet. Ecclesiastes 5:12. Now, that 26 and a half years, that's a 30-year life. That's about 8-9 hours a day. Now, I understand right now there's some blowback on this. Like, you don't know what I'm up against. Oh, no, I do know what you're up against. Trust me. I've worked midnights. I've had some children. My wife and I have had some children. When the twins were born, I had the 2 a.m. feeding shift. And you know, the way you do that is you sit on a couch and you cross your legs and you put Aaron over here and Noah over here, and you get your baby bottles properly warmed. And then you go like this. It's very difficult to feed them like this. So you cross your arms, boom, 2 a.m. feeding. Why was I doing the 2 a.m. feeding? Because Mary did the 8 feeding, the 10 o'clock feeding, the 12 o'clock feeding, the 5 a.m. feeding. Okay, I've been there. It's hard to get your sleep sometimes, depending on the season of life you're in or the job you have. And let me tell you just a little words of advice. If you have a choice, some of you can relate to this, between a midnight shift for a little more money and a day shift, take the day shift. Trust me, take the day shift. Okay? You want to do that. Losing sleep is a very unhealthy thing. I think sleep is the most foundational part of health, that and hydration. Sleep. Love your sleep. Get your sleep when you can. If you just have to grab it some other time or take a nap, then do it. You have to sleep. Here's another one. Now, I have to be careful here. Like I said, take your diet seriously. It's important what you put in your mouth. Paul says, all things are lawful for me. Can I eat 2 pieces of cheesecake? Sure. Nothing wrong with it. But I will not be dominated by anything. There actually is something wrong with that. I will not be dominated by anything. I'm not going to let molecules run my life, okay? Little food molecules in my small intestine. I'm not going to let them run me. And you know, the food industry, we're being played by the food industry. I won't get into it, but it's true. They know how to make things that you can't not eat. And so you have to be smart. You really do. You got to read labels. You know that 80% of the things that are in processed food today didn't exist before 1950. Okay? We're living in chemical. We're just living on chemicals. It's not even food. And that gets back to eating more whole foods, more raw foods if possible, and things like that. I looked it up. I couldn't believe it, but I looked it up. There are 126 flavors of Cheetos. And if that's not enough, there's 181 flavors of Doritos. That's crazy. Whatever happened to Triscuits? Whole wheat, water, salt, right? It's funny, but we're just washed with chemicals. If you can't pronounce it, you ought to not probably put it in your body. If you can get away with it. Now, here's another one. Sugar. Okay, I said it. If all you did today was decide I'm going to eat less sugar on a regular basis, you would be more healthy right away. Guaranteed. You would. And I can attest to it myself. I'm pretty much got a sweet tooth. When I grew up, my mom used to have you go into her bedroom, you'd open up her dresser drawer, and she'd have sponge candy from Russell Stover's in there. Have you ever had sponge candy? It's little square things covered in milk chocolate, pretty good. And then you'd go over in the other room, there'd be some M&Ms in it, peanut M&Ms, but M&Ms in there. Okay, so I worked in a bakery. I've had my share of donuts, all of that stuff. But eventually you got to say, no, hold everything, stop the train. I've got to eat less sugar. Sugar has no nutritional value, zero. And actually, if you study it, it's very difficult to digest and process. In fact, the metabolism of sugar, I'm really getting in the weeds here, is 8 out of the 10 same things that happen when you digest alcohol, except for the sedative effect. Think about that. And we're drinking a Mountain Dew with 75 grams of sugar, and later on that evening we're doing this or that or the other thing. We just got to be more careful. We got to be better stewards of our body. Agreed? And I don't want to get on a soapbox here either, even though I kind of am. And then another one, the last one in this little point, is identify your dependencies. Remember, the food industry is playing us. We have to say no to something. Why don't you try fasting? Have you ever fasted? Crickets. No, I know you have. You didn't have to answer that. Fasting is when you say to yourself and to God, that's the most important thing. You say, Lord, I want you to remind me of whatever your prayer request is. I want it to be on my mind all the time. And to do that, I'm going to forego something. You don't have to fast like not eat anything. That's one way to do it. Or you could do it by saying, I'm not going to, whatever it might be. I'm just going to stop that. I'm going to cut that off. And Lord, I want you to do it to you, unto you. So you remind me of this prayer need that I'm lifting up to you. Fasting would be a great way. Some people fast maybe once a week, or they do fasting like they don't eat after 6 o'clock until the morning. There's some simple things you can do. These things are free and they're simple, and we should be busy with them. And the last thing here in this little topic is push your activity level. So we've got love your sleep. That's probably a good one. Take your diet seriously, make changes if needed, ask for help from people who know these things. Again, this is stewardship. And then push your activity level. Do something. Park away from the door. Take the stairs. Lift your arms over your head and wave them in the air. Do something. Move somehow. The best you can. Some people can, run a marathon. Some people can walk across the room. We'll do it and then walk back again, and then catch your breath and then walk again. Just do something. Become more active. I remember my dad in the later years of his life. I regret not forcing him to be more active for longer periods of time, because he began to just atrophy and everything just begins to suck in. And pretty soon there's no getting it back. So we just need to push our levels. I quoted out of this book that I've been reading, Leaders of Men, and I have another short quote from it. It's more important to know how to have, this was written 100 years ago. It's more important to know how to have and keep a sound body than how to get riches and keep them. Money is the most envied, but the least enjoyed. Health is the least envied, but the most enjoyed. And we like to say, he who is well has 1,000 wishes. He who is sick has but one. So your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. That's in the Bible. And so we just need to remember that and steward that body. So finally here, let's just touch on money. This will be short and easy. I'm not an expert on this, but I do have a Bible. Yeah, grows on trees. Luke 19, he called his 10 servants and delivered to them 10 pounds or 10 minas in your translation, perhaps, and said unto them, here's what he said to his servants, occupy till I come. I chose the King James because I like that. Occupy till I come. What does that mean, to occupy? It could be translated do business, or maybe it says invest this. The NIV says put this money to work until I come. So what is he talking about? He's talking about money. I can't spiritualize this. It's very, very clear what he's talking about. And Jesus uses money a lot of times. And we looked at that interesting parable in Luke 16 a little bit. He uses money as an kind of a barometer of you, an indicator of what you are. Remember, he who is faithful in little will be faithful also in much. If you're a stingy person and you stumble into $1 million, you're probably going to be really stingy because that's who you are. However, if you're a generous person and all of a sudden your ship comes in, you'll be very generous because that's who you are. And money is not, I know the love of money is the root of all evil. We know that. But money itself is benign. It can be used or abused. And so there's some proverbs here and a verse very common out of 1 Timothy we'll look at as we wrap up here. One thing I say about money and stewardship of money is to be true in your motive. He that hasteth to be rich hath an evil eye. If you just want to get rich, and that's where you're starting, that's your starting point. I want to be rich. No, that's not right. Can't do it that way. You've got to be true. What does it profit if you gain the whole world and forfeit your own soul? If your quest of riches sidetracks your spiritual direction, then you failed, no matter how much money you make. You want to be godly. You want to be true in that desire. And then be honest. Proverbs 11, a false balance is an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. Now, what's a false balance? That's where you got your thumb on the scale. Okay, you're not honest in your business, or you're in a business that's not honest. And you can be careful. You got to be careful about this. A lot of sales, there's some dishonesty in there, and they got to make you do something that's not right. You say, can't do that. Got to do what's right. Got to be true. Got to be honest for God to show his favor on me as I steward the gift of money. And then be diligent. Seest thou a man diligent in his business? He shall stand before kings. And there have been some men in our history who've been very diligent in their business, and they've been asked upon by the U.S. government to prop up the government, Carnegie and some other people like that. I don't know what they were like as a person, but in terms of their generosity, they built libraries and universities and all sorts of things with their money and helped a lot of people. And we're thankful for that. Diligence in your business. If you want to be successful, you're going to have to work hard. You really are. If that's your direction, you're going to have to really, really get down to it. And you're going to have to really be careful about prioritizing your time, as we talked about, because you could easily spend all your time on, can't do it, yep, got to work, got to do this. No, you've got to have a balance in your life. You really do. I remember when I was learning computers, my instructor was an employee at Blue Cross, I think, and he told us a valuable lesson of business, and especially programming, and could be a lot of things, is at the end of the day, he said, close your book and go home. Do not take your work with you. But sometimes you might have to, I get that. But generally, just don't do that. By the way, do you have your cell phone by your bed? Why don't you try something for me? Put it in the living room and love your sleep. Really, if it's there, it's there, right? It's there. And it's easy to get on it. But if it's not there, then it's not going to be easy to get on it. So try that. See what happens. That's what we've been doing. unless you got an alarm on it or something like that. All right. And the last point here, for those that want to steward their money, you remember that Exodus quote or Deuteronomy quote? It says, be careful if you think that my hands got all this done. He goes, no, no, no. It's God who gives you the power to get rich. God does it. And some people have that knack. They call it the business acumen. Things just work and they know how to do things. And we appreciate that. So if that's one of you, be generous. 1 Timothy 6, we know this well. Command those who are rich in this present age, let them do good, that they be rich in good works, ready to give, willing to share. Why? Because they can. They have resources beyond their needs, and they should be generous. And so that's a way to really steward the gift of money is through generosity. Well, we got through it all, and I hope it wasn't too much of a fire hose. I hope there were some points here that you latched onto. We talked about the proper use of time, not wasting time, but investing time as you can. Your talents and your skills, to use them for others and to glorify God in them. And then we just looked at your body and some of these difficult things that we're all faced with. We're all challenged with these things at one level or another. Nobody's immune from that. We have to be wise. There's a lot of good information out there about nutrition, about diet, about lifestyle, and how it can affect you. And then we just talked about money. Now, the last point I wanted to bring up, which I'll do next week, I'm speaking next week, is stewarding your mind. And that's enough for one message. That is your emotions and all of the things that filter through our mind. So we want to look at that, pray for that message, that we could have a good word for that.